We are delighted to welcome Leslie Grahn, an independent consultant and supervisor of world languages for Howard County Public Schools in Maryland. Leslie Grahn has 27 years of language teaching experience at the middle and high school levels, and 12 years experience at the central level office. Leslie has been a course instructor on foreign language teaching methods and differentiated instruction, has led both curriculum and assessment development teams, and is a frequent presenter at state, regional, and national conferences, specializing in best practices. She has experience in teacher leadership development and leads training on instructional coaching, mentoring, leadership, and communication skills. Please join me in giving a virtual warm welcome to Leslie Grahn.
Hi,
Leslie,
I'm
take it away.
sorry, but there's someone in the background and we can't hear what you're saying.
Apologies for that. We are in the shared office space, so sometimes you might hear that in the background, but I'm just presenting our speaker. So our speaker is going to go now.
Okay, hello, welcome. I just was with you 2 hours ago, so we've seen each other before. I'm Leslie Grahn, and I'm happy to spend some time with you this morning talking about lesson planning that brings the standards to life. So that whole idea about you might have gotten the big picture from the keynote today, and now we're going to boil it down to, so what does this look like in lessons? And I noticed that several of you put that comment in the Padlet earlier, talking about, so how do I craft my lessons to align with the standards? So you'll see here on the screen that everything connected with me is Grahn for Lang. Grahn is my last name, for as in foreign, Lang as in language. So you'll see that grahn4lang.com is my website. On Blue Sky, on X, on Pinterest, and on Instagram, I'm Grahn4lang. So if you just remember Grahn4lang, you can pretty much find me anywhere. So this is what my website looks like, and you will find on my website all kinds of resources relating to pedagogical topics having to do with instruction. So authentic resources, communicative modes, teaching grammar and context, intercultural communication. And then if you scroll further down on my homepage, you'll see there's a whole section on leadership. And that's because I do work with teacher leaders and district leaders. And then as you scroll further down, there's links to online professional development I've done that are free to access, all kinds of additional resources there. So I invite you to check it out. This is what my Pinterest boards look like. I currently have over 200 boards and 22,000 pins. You will find language-specific resources there that I've curated already for you. I've curated and collected lots of authentic resources. Some of them are gathered together by topic. So you'll see there is a board for family, a board for food, a board for school, a board for environment, a board for homelessness, a board, right? So all kinds of different topics where I've already collected and curated those things for you. And then the most important link for today is here. And this is where you're going to find the resources specific to our session. So I'm going to ask my moderators to help me out if you can put that into the chat. This will be a Google Drive folder that you can access now and also after the session. So if you'd like to share any of this information with your colleagues at your school, you're welcome to do that. And so I've just taken a screenshot here of what it looks like when you access the folder. So let me pause again for a moment so you can get into the folder, and it's a bit.ly link. Hey, check out the link in the chat. Okay, awesome. So let's get started. We are talking about communicative tasks this morning. And so a great place to start is, what are we going to accomplish in our time together? So you're going to be able to use the NYS standards and resources to guide the task design process for your lessons, and also you're going to be able to implement strategies for designing learning tasks for the modes with a focus on communication and support. And again, we talked about some of that earlier this morning during the keynote. So let's start out by, since we're talking about communication, what kind of communicator are you? So we're going to do a quick SEL check-in here. Are you an analyzer? Are you someone that likes facts and logic and prefers policies and planning? You're organized, you prefer control over chaos, and you like instructions. You like to have directions. If you're a director, you are focused in on objectives and results. You want to see productivity, you are competitive, you take charge, and you make firm decisions. Are you a socializer? Socializers focus in on motivation, you prefer teamwork, you prefer building relationships, nurturing and sensitive, and you can be a good listener. And then finally, are you a relator? Relators enjoy change and creativity. They're friendly and optimistic. You like big ideas and conceptualization, and you're adaptable. So if you'll go to the chat and put in for me, which of these 4 communication styles do you think you best exemplify? Are you an analyzer, a director, a socializer, or a relator? So just as we're kicking off our session on, lots of analyzers. I see a bunch of analyzers. Whoa, lots of relators. Here comes some socializers. Some people are saying there are 3 of the 4. All right. So understanding what our own communication style is like is important because we know that the way we communicate is sometimes our preference when we teach. So we want to make sure that we're also speaking to students that are different kind of communicators. Thank you for playing along there. Let's go. So we're going to start out by talking about what's a task. And that's because we're talking about communicative tasks in this session. So first, let's define what is a task. So in our classrooms, we do 3 kinds of activities or 3 kinds of processes with our students. We have things that are exercises, we have things that are activities, and we have things that we call tasks. And so often lessons have all 3 types of experiences rolled in. And when we're thinking about increasing student engagement, we're thinking about increasing student proficiency, we're thinking about increasing their confidence with the target language, what we want to do is do more tasks. So what I'm going to have you do next is we're going to put you in some breakout rooms. And again, I can do this real quick instead of people having to copy it. I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms, and about 3 people per room, Tammy, would be great. And we're going to, let me make sure this is going to everyone. Here you go. So don't click it yet. You're going to go there and you're going to go to the slide that matches your breakout room number. So we're going to divide into 3s right now and go in there and use the sticky notes to have a conversation about what is an exercise versus what is an activity versus what is a task. And you also could talk a little bit about how do those things intersect. So when you think about the kind of things you plan for your students, what are the activities? What are the exercises? What are the tasks? So I'm going to show you what that looks like now, and then we'll have Tammy put us into breakout rooms. Let me make sure I'm in the right account. And you'll see you have a slide here where you can slide over the sticky notes and then type on them your ideas. So we're ready to go to the breakout rooms. We're just going to do this for about 5 or 6 minutes.
Creating the breakout rooms, everyone should get an invite. Please click on the link to go to your breakout rooms. Leslie, people are saying they don't see the link. Do you mind putting it in the chat?
Happy to do so. Let's see.
I can also try to type it out.
Yeah, it's,
Leslie,
there you go.
you got it. Okay.
Sorry for that.
I can broadcast that link as well. Give me 1 second.
Oh, I have people on there. Good. Thank you. Do you mind also broadcasting out that they're working on the slide that corresponds to their breakout room number?
There are a few people still here. Make sure if you are still here to click on the button that says join breakout room. If you are still here. I see your message, Paola. Let me just add you to a room. See what room needs a personnel.
Thank you.
We need the slides that Leslie was speaking about. We didn't have the link.
Yes, I broadcasted it out, but it's also in the chat. Do you see it right now? bit.ly.
No.
Okay. Put it in the chat again.
Okay. Thank you.
Get some people to some rooms.
Can I return to my room, please? I was in 39.
Lazar is asking to be moved back into her room.
Thank you.
15.
The slide link is like a pop-up, then it's just disappear. So I don't know, we cannot see the slide link. So I just came back.
Hi, I think people didn't get the link beforehand, and even when I broadcast it, it doesn't come up as a link. Should I bring everyone back, Leslie?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
better.
it's okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd use too much time. It's fine.
Link was able to open up for me, so I don't trying to understand what the issue might be there, but
I think when you go into the room, you don't get the chat
Oh, I
from the,
see.
you don't get the main chat. Okay, ¿qué pasó?
No worries. I understand that folks were having problems accessing the link, and it's okay. I just don't want to use more time of the session. So hopefully some of the ideas you thought about might be matched to what I'm going to show you next. And so again, I apologize if that was super confusing for some folks, because I know the link wasn't working for everyone, but it was all about you thinking about how would you, if you had to explain to a novice teacher the difference between exercises, activities, and tasks, what would you say? So exercises are recall based. So think about different things we would do where I would say one word and the students had to give back another word. So they're recall based, pretty much controlled and guided. And students could do exercises individually, typically in the form of a worksheet. Exercises can be used during the guided phase of instruction where you're leading students through it. And exercises may not be cognitively challenging for advanced learners and may not be engaging to reluctant learners. So we want to be careful kind of that drill and kill practice. Classroom activities are typically structured around a routine. So you might have students do a human bingo or find someone who, and they're walking around the room finding someone that likes the color blue or is wearing a necklace or whatever. Some examples could be information gap activities, think, pair, share, and inside-outside circles. They're often hands-on and interactive and are planned for the guided or independent phases of the lesson. Now let's talk about tasks, because that's what our focus is today. Classroom tasks involve a context based on a problem, challenge, or scenario. The students have a purpose for completing the task. The steps of the task should be outlined, and expectations for the performance or product students create are clear. Tasks are completed individually by students or in small groups. So the idea is that as I move across the continuum from an exercise that's just a practice to an activity, which is a little bit more interactive, to a task that involves this real world problem, challenge, scenario, a real world context. And so obviously the point of what we're talking about today is that we want to make as many of the experiences, the learning experiences we plan for our students to be in the task column. So you'll notice that inside your folder, you have this bookmark that I created about how do I move an exercise to the activity level and how do I move an activity to the task level. And so that whole idea about I can still use similar things, but I need to now see if I can bump it up a level because that's where I'm getting closer and closer to the task being real world and communicative. So one way I can do that is to provide an authentic context. So I want to create a scenario which provides a context, possibly based on an authentic resource. Consider a real life context for the exercise or activity. For example, in lieu of using a PowerPoint with visuals, we're going to introduce our new vocabulary using infographics or tweets, which are real world. Another way I can move an exercise or activity up towards a classroom task is to make them more communicative, interactive, and engaging. So I want to transform those individual exercises to activities where students might be working collaboratively, using hands-on, using technology, allowing students to be creative. Then we want to make sure that the activity gives students a reason to communicate and builds their confidence for using the target language independently, while providing supports to allow them to persevere through the activity. So I can give you an example. Let's say you have a crossword puzzle. Well, if I sat there and did a crossword puzzle by myself as a student, that is an exercise. So all I'm doing is looking at the clue and then I'm writing in the blank. But if I took that same crossword puzzle and I gave just the puzzle to students, but I took all the clues, which would be in the target language, and I would print them out, cut them up, and put them in an envelope. And now students have to pull out one by one and read to their partner or their small group members. 2 across is this definition. And now the other students say, oh, that's a that. And so there's some communication happening during the task. Marie, what would you like to ask?
I have a question because right now we are working on the family unit in advanced kids. What I try to do is I try to use the family trees of celebrities that they know they don't know, but in the target language. What's your take on that?
So if they're creating family trees, that's a project, but now what are they doing with it that's communicative? So how are they having a conversation about it? How are they using the vocabulary they've learned during the unit to have so your the trees would be like a resource, and now how are they using that resource to communicate in some way? So always pushing it to the how can I make it more communicative? Yes, they're using the target language, but how can I turn it into something that students maybe do an interpersonal exchange about?
Like
hope
I give
that's
them the question, like I give them the question to ask them with the relationship that exists among the people in the family trees.
Sure. And again, we want to leave some open-endedness for them to be able to design their own questions as well, right? Otherwise, that becomes an activity where I'm just doing reading comprehension. Whereas I want also for them to be able to turn and talk about, oh, well, I like this person, or I know this, or I like what this person's wearing, or to make a personal connection in some way.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And then finally, I want to design tasks that connect to real life. So I want to think about how can this task mirror what is really happening in the world? And one of the ways to do that is to brainstorm scenarios using SCRAP. And SCRAP is an acronym for situation, challenge, role, audience, and product. I also want to make sure that when I make a task, that it's scaffolded and supported for struggling learners, but also open-ended enough that advanced learners can tell me even more. Because remember, the goal of any task that I create for students is about, I want to get a read on where they are on the proficiency continuum. Are they currently speaking or writing at a novice high? Are they currently speaking or writing at an intermediate low? What is my proficiency target for this course, whether it's checkpoint A, B, C? That's what I'm aiming at. So let's take an example. You saw this earlier today in the keynote. This is a worksheet asking them to write the French verb in the present tense of the IR verbs. So what if I tried to make it more authentic? Well, what I might do is tell a story. So I'm going to take away these disconnected sentences and I'm going to provide a context where it's now a story that's being told and they're filling in the verbs in between. That pushes it to an activity because now they're doing something communicative with it. It could be famous quotes, it could be Mad Libs, it could be anything, but I'm adding a context to the exercise. And then as you saw for during the keynote, I can even push it further by adding authentic resources. And in this case, these are social media posts and also some memes. And so by adding those authentic resources, I've created context for the exercise. So imagine that I have these lyrics to a song called Danse, which means dance. And I want to move from just putting blanks in it. So typically when we do lyrics with students, we often do a cloze activity, CLOZE. And that's where I take words out. And then while they're listening, they're just writing the words they hear. So that's very much at a activity level. And that's because it is in the target language. There is a context, right? So I already achieved number one, but now how can I make it more communicative, interactive, and engaging? How can I connect it to real life in some way? And so in order to move this activity to a task level, I would need to think of a way to go from just the lyrics and filling it in to now making connections in some way. So for students to literally put the ideas from the song in one column, and then what that has to do with their life in the right-hand column. So the idea is we want to make it sound more real life to them, other than just being able to read the text of the song. Here's another example. This is a video in Spanish about, it says, let's separate recyclables. So again, if I just had students write down words that they heard during the video or fill in blanks, that very much is a activity because it is in context. It's about this video, which is an authentic resource. But now how can I make it more communicative? And so again, I can make that connection to real life. Well, do you recycle? Tell me about how you recycle. And so that connection to real life now pushes it to the level of a task. So I want you to think about a recent lesson exercise or activity you did. So whatever you did last week, pick out one little activity you did. Was it at an exercise level? Was it at an activity level? And then how would you bump it up to an activity or task? And so what might you do? And the idea of the bookmark is to give you an idea of some of the steps you might take to push things to be at the task level. So it's real world, it's connected to their real lives, it has an authentic context. And so that's our goal, is to really have these ideas in the back of our minds as we're planning our lessons. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about communicative purpose. If we want students to communicate and know how to do something with the language, we need to know, why are they communicating? What's the purpose of it? And really, that's what students are asking for. So this is a study that was done of some high school students, and they did interviews with them about why does language class, why do you like it? Why do you take languages? And you'll notice that in the first comment from the student, it says, well, I keep wanting to learn the language because I have kids around me who speak Chinese. And that inspires me to keep on going because I can communicate with them. And then you'll see the other comment from students was all about being able to connect with individuals and from the culture, with speakers, with resources from the culture. So again, there comes that idea of connection, being able to use what I'm learning in the real world. And that's from the mouths of our high school students. They also mentioned existing or new connections with native speakers, including classmates, family members, neighbors, teachers, exchange students, and that triggers their interest in learning a language. So an example would be in one of my high school Spanish teachers in my district, every once in a while, she had her level 3 and 4 students pair up with students from the multilingual learners class, and they would spend part of the time talking about a real world problem in Spanish, And then halfway through, they made some sort of sound and they switched into English so that both students in the pairs benefited from the conversation, one in their own language, one in the language that they were learning. So if I had to make a list of what are the qualities of a communicative task, here are some examples of what I would think about. It would need to be in an authentic real-world situation. It has a clear purpose. It's in the target language. It requires speaking, listening, viewing, reading, and/or writing. It aligns to proficiency targets and my performance objectives. Remember the I can statements we talked about earlier this morning. And it focuses on a message of some sort. How am I giving a message to the person I'm talking to or to the wider community or world using the language that I've learned? And this is a fantastic image that Joanne O'Toole, who you know is one of the key people who have been working with Candace in the State Department on unit design, lesson design, things like that. And so she has here all these different ideas that are very similar to the ones that I just showed you. Learning tasks should be contextualized and purposeful. It should use a language function. So those are those action words we talked about earlier. They're meaningful. They're logically sequenced and they move from being input to output. They also move from highly scaffolded to students being able to work on their own with the material. They're scaffolded. They alternate between whole group, small group, and pair group, and they promote success towards the learning targets. Because remember, the focus is what students can do with the language. So I'm going to give you some examples and I want you to tell me, is this a communicative task or not? So I'm going to have you type or show a 1. Now, when I say show, it means you turn on your camera and you're just showing one finger, or you can type yes, or you can shake your head yes, however you want to do it. And then if it's not, I want you to show a 2 or type a 2 or show no by shaking your head no. Okay? Ready? Students completing a worksheet. Okay, that one's a no. That was kind of a giveaway because there's no context and also there's no communicative purpose to it. Students playing an online game where they give the target language word or phrase for an English one. Communicative or not? That's a no. Now, it's really important that students love playing these games, right? They love doing escape rooms and they love doing all these online games, but let's make sure that it is communicative and not just at a word or phrase level. Because again, those word and phrase level activities tend to be about recall and not about communicating a message to someone else. Teacher asking questions and individual students providing responses, yes or no. So for this one, I think we could argue both depending on the types of questions teachers are asking, but I would lean towards no on this one because only individual students are participating in the activity, right? And so I ask a question as a teacher, I ask for response number 1 from a certain student. The rest of the students are just watching, right? And so it isn't really a task where all students are communicating. A 4 corners activity. So that's where students go into the 4 corners of the room. Okay, that's a yes. And for the most part, when people do 4 corners, kids go into the corners of the room. So saying, what is your favorite season? Is it spring, winter, fall, summer? Now, once you get to your season groups, talk about the kinds of activities you do in the summer, in the winter, in the fall, in the spring. Students performing a memorized dialogue. Is that communicative? Okay, the answer is no, because they're not creating language on their own. They are just memorizing something, recalling it, right? And then giving it back. Now, can memorizing certain phrases be useful to learners? Yes, but I would not consider those a communicative task. And that's what our focus is on today. Okay, thank you for playing. Let's move on. So, when I'm thinking about communicative purpose, I can look at my standards, your new revised standards from the New York State Department of Education. And you see on the right there, I've got lots of those action words. Students communicate, they interact, they negotiate, they present, they identify, they describe, they explain. So if something is a communicative task, it's going to have that communicative purpose. So if and this is one that they gave me. So obviously these are the two anchor standards we talked about earlier this morning, anchor standard communication and the other cultures. And that there's within those two anchor standards, 5 learning standards, interpretive, interpersonal, presentational under communication, and then cultural practices, products, and perspectives for 4, and then also comparisons for 5. And remember, it's focused in on what students can do with the language. And obviously, this aligns directly with the ACTFL World Readiness Standards, and we're also promoting college, career, and civic readiness. So a fantastic resource. I know I'm telling you a lot today about fantastic resources I like, but you really are, you have a very abundant and rich amount of resources to help you through this transition. And this is one of them that I particularly like. I know Jill shows this one all the time, but it talks about how to read the standards. And again, it's color coded. So it talks about what's the context of the communication, what language functions are students able to do, and those are those verbs. What language skills are they showing? And then what cultural knowledge would they gain? And so you can see there in the bottom that it talks about I can language function. So that's your verb. What's the context? What skill are they demonstrating? And what cultural knowledge? And so it's I can exchange information about a typical school day. In what context? With a school exchange partner. How am I doing it? By speaking online. And so I love how they've given these almost in a formulaic way that we can use them when we're designing tasks. And to be honest with you, a lot of people who started writing curriculum after the World Readiness Standards came out, we were using a really similar formula where we take language directly out of the standards and then just plug in about family, about food, about travel, right? So we can customize it to the theme, but we're still holding on to those communicative verbs and the context in which students are going to communicate. So let's break it down even further. If you have not seen these green type resources from NYS, these are also awesome because they are a 1-page at a glance. What is interpretive communication? And so we know interpretive is when you understand and interpretive and analyze something you listen to, view, or read. And so that's exactly the same way that language arts sees interpretive communication. It's listening, viewing, reading. And then you'll see there it has some great images and examples for you of how that works. Now, when this is directly from the necessful, actful, can-do statements, just because these are easier for me to highlight, is underneath interpretive communication, you're going to see those 3 blue boxes there. The turquoise blue. So what can I understand and interpret and analyze in authentic informational texts that I hear, view, or read, fictional text that I hear, read, or view, and conversations and discussions that I hear, read, or view. And so there are my active verbs, right? My action verbs already there for me. And these are broken down in what were some reasons why I would practice the interpretive mode. And so you can see how parallel these are. And so if I'm using a fictional text with my students, I'm looking for ways that will understand, interpret, or analyze that text. And in the functions resource, which I showed you earlier, there's that helper list of all the different action words I might use when I'm describing what a student can do in the interpretive mode. Same thing for interpersonal. And again, remember, these are these at a glance documents. And interpersonal, we know, is when I'm able to interact and negotiate meaning with you in a spontaneous way. And so it's not something that's scripted. It's not something I wrote down ahead of time, but something I'm doing in the moment with you. And so again, there's all kinds of awesome resources and examples there. Here's an example from the necessful, actful, can-do statements. And what are the communicative purposes of interpersonal? To exchange information with someone else, to meet my needs or address a situation, or to express, react to, and support preferences and opinions. So as I'm thinking about designing interpersonal tasks, I'm thinking about, okay, what's the purpose of the kids talking to each other? Are they giving each other information? Is there something they need from the other person? Or are they expressing their opinions and preferences? And so this is a great way to use these things as a guide for when you're designing tasks, specifically in this case, in the interpersonal mode. By the way, I'll put a PDF of this slide deck into the folder later on today. So if you want to revisit any of these slides, you can. And so there's that functional verb resource again. And there are all those action words you can use when you're thinking about your lesson objectives, and therefore aligning your communicative tasks with them. And actually, the interpersonal goes on to 2 pages. And then finally, we're going to talk about presentational. Presentational, exactly what it sounds like. You're going to present information to somebody else, and it's going to be for a variety of audiences and listeners and viewers. And the key words there are describe, inform, narrate, explain, and persuade. And again, lots of other good resources and examples there. What is the purpose of me presenting something? To narrate about my life and experiences, to give a preference, opinion, or persuasion, or to inform, describe, and explain. And again, as I'm designing my lesson objectives and therefore my tasks around those lesson objectives, I can use these 3 as a guide. Oh, I'm going to have students give a preference today about their free time activities. And so that is a presentational mode communicative purpose. And there again on your functions page are all the verbs you can use for your can-do statements and therefore your tasks. And you might remember that this is the word cloud I showed earlier today. And these are all the action verbs that students should be able to do as they progress across the proficiency continuum. All right, so now let's get down to the actual task design. So one thing, I'm gonna give you 4 things to think about when you're designing your communicative tasks. And we're gonna specifically focus in on interpersonal and presentational today. I'm gonna ask, what is your corresponding learning target? So you see the first arrow down on the bottom left. What is this target? So is it for interpersonal or presentational mode? And what is the can-do statement? I can what? What's the action verb there? Secondly, what instructional strategy will you use? Instructional strategies can be something as simple as turn and talk, or something where students have to get up out of their seats and do an inside-outside circle or a 4 corners. The next question I ask myself is, what scaffold am I going to provide? And that could be a graphic organizer, That could be a list of sentence starters. It could be a list of expressions that I'm giving them. What is going to support a learner who maybe isn't as confident and comfortable speaking in the target language or writing in the target language? And then finally, what kind of grouping are you doing? Is this an individual task? Is it a pair, a small group task? Is it a whole class task? And so again, thinking about that grouping, and you might remember that grouping and scaffolding were two of the ideas on the slide from Joanne O'Toole. So let's take an example. Here are 3 learning objectives. Notice they all start with I can, and they also have those verbs in them. So in the interpretive mode, I can identify. In the interpersonal mode, I can express. And then the presentational mode, I can describe. And notice that this unit happens to be about sports and activities. So let's start with the interpretive. I can identify popular sports and activities in the target culture. So on the left, I have my target. So this is interpretive mode. I can identify popular sports and activities in the target culture. The authentic resource I'm going to use for this is a infographic. It has the results of a survey that was given in Mexico of people asking them what they do in their free time. And you might be able to see there that 62% said they're on their computer, 13% said they're on watching TV, etc. Then in the third position, notice I have a scaffold. What do you do in your free time? So they're going to take the ideas from the infographic. Notice it's making a personal connection and list the things from the infographic that they do and things they don't. So maybe they don't spend time reading, for example. So that would be on the right-hand side. And then I'm choosing to group students in small groups while they're doing this particular task. So notice how I've thought about the can-do statement, the task itself. So is that a prompt or a scenario? In this case, it's a text. Is there a scaffold? In this case, there's a graphic organizer. This could have been a list of expressions or sentence starters. And then I'm choosing to do this in a small group. So there's a communicative task all packaged up there. This is the exact same task, but this task, I just switched out the authentic resource. So this authentic resource is also about free time activities, but this one happens to be in French. But I can use the exact same learning target, the exact same scaffold, the exact same grouping. I've just switched out the authentic resource. Now let's look at the interpersonal can-do statement. I can express my preferences regarding sports and activities. And so here I'm going to use the instructional strategy of inside-outside circles. If you're not familiar with that, there's a big circle that faces in, a smaller circle that faces out, and then there's students facing one another. Whoever's directly across from me is my partner. And so I talk with that person, and then when time is called, one of the circles moves around one person, and so now I have a brand new partner. I have to tell you that in my classroom, I never could fit inside outside circles, so I did parallel lines because I could make a row down the center. The scaffold I'm going to give them is do you like, I don't like, I love, I hate. And they're going to do this in pairs because obviously as they go around the inside outside circles, they're paired up with someone else. And then finally, the presentational, I can describe sports and activities that are popular. I'm going to have students create a survey for their classmates in the target language about popular sports and activities. Do you like this? Do you like that? And they're going to survey the results and ideally do something with those results, right? And that would be something students are doing individually. So as you're thinking about a recent interpersonal or presentational task you've done, I want you to think about those 4 aspects. What was the can-do statement? What strategy did you use? Did you give a scaffold to the students? And what kind of grouping did you use? And then, as I said there, how would you improve that task if some part of these ideas were missing from that task? Then you can think about designing tasks in a sequence. So what would be natural that I start with this task and then that moves into this task, right? So we want this connected series of tasks going together. And so the easiest task sequence would be students interacting in some way with a text, an authentic resource, and then they move to pairs and talk about it with their friends. And so you see that moved from interpretive to interpersonal, it moved from individual to pairs. You see that we have a graphic organizer here that is going to be their scaffold. And you see here, they're talking about the text and what they agree with or disagree with. And so there was some sort of organizer where they were writing, I agree, I disagree. If you want to move it into 3 tasks that flow together, you might think about doing that same interpretive and interpersonal and now add a presentational aspect. And so again, you can see where I can go from we're working together to work with a text, and then in small groups, students are talking about it and connecting it to the real world, and then they are doing something individual with it. And then obviously we can build out to 4 and 5 step sequences, which literally can fill out your entire lesson plan where it just keeps building on itself. And so you'll see here, it goes from individual to whole class, to pair, to whole class, to individual, making sure I'm mixing up the flexible grouping kind of strategies and also the modes across the top. Notice on this one, the yellow parts are scaffold. So what kind of scaffold am I giving them? And so all of these sequences, these longer sequences, I have put in your folder. And I will show you that in just a sec. Here they are. So if you look in the folder, the link that I gave you in the beginning, you can see the ideas for some of these sequences where I put tasks together to form a lesson plan. And literally, I can take one of these, put my warm up or opening routine up here, put the some kind of SEL check-in, a brain break or something in the middle, and then do an interactivity or game or exit ticket. And I just filled out an entire lesson plan of those tasks that all connect together. So in your folder, you're going to find a series of generic lesson sequences. When I say generic, it's because there is no theme. You're putting your own theme in, but I'm showing you how you might have your tasks run in a sequence, addressing all the groupings, the strategies, and also the modes. So also I gave you a blank template if you wanted to play around with designing your own series of tasks that form a lesson. So I'm going to stop. I know I'm right at time right now. And let me stop sharing so I can see your beautiful faces. Okay. Any questions or comments?
How can we receive a full copy of your presentation from this morning and today regarding to locating the resources other than through like a link? Is it a way that you could like give us a email blast or something?
So I personally will put my slide deck into our Google Drive folder. If Jill wants to also blast that out to you all, she can do that because I don't have access to all your emails. But I am going to provide that for you so you have the slides if you want to go back and look at those. Anybody else? All right. I believe your next session starts at, can you help me, Tammy?
1 sec, let me check.
12:45.
12:45. So you have a little less than 15 minutes. Thank you for joining me for the session.
Hi, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Hi, this is Esperanza. Can I have the the quote, not the quote,
The attendance code?
the attendance code, yes. please.
Okay.
Just put it in the chat for everyone again.
I haven't seen it. I requested
Just
it.
now.
with the
I
Just
just
now.
put it back in for you after you, as soon as you request, I'll put it in again.
Thank you,
Back in there
Leslie.
again.
And
All
then
right, thank
There
you.
you
I see you now.
go.
the Padlet
Okay.
links are takeaways about the content, right? Not questions about attendance or CTLE.
Oh, it's all good.
Content.
I have one last question, if it's possible. We have time.
Sure, sure.
Leslie, thank you so much. How do we find these infographics? How do you find infographics? What is your MO to find authentic materials? Thank you.
So if you go into our folder in the Google Drive and you click on Leslie's Pinterest boards, it's going to take you to my Pinterest, and I have already collected many of these resources for you. So for example, if you go into clothing, I have a separate folder for Spanish, French, Italian, German, Chinese, Arabic, and I've already curated those for you. And I try to curate a variety of text types. So you'll see I have infographics, I have sale ads, I have social media posts. I try to have a nice variety, articles, things like that. And so please feel free to search in my Pinterest first, because I've done that curating for you. And so they're already there. You don't have to kind of be out on Google just trying to find them. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. And I wish you lots of luck with your new semester. And thank you, Tammy and Anthony, for backing me up today as my moderators. I really appreciate you. And thank you, Jill.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Leslie, for zooming in for us. Okay.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye,
Hi,
everyone.
Hi,
Take
Anthony and
care.
Tammy. I have a question.
Yeah.
I wrote it on the chat. I apologize. I thought I was enrolled in the session, but apparently I was enrolled in another session and I stayed here during the whole time. Can I get credit for this session since I was here?
I just responded to you just
Oh,
right
you did?
now.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll try our best to make this happen, but however, as stated in the morning,
Sure.
you do have to attend the session that you're enrolled in to get CTLE. We will try our best to make it work within the system, but
Hello?
we just can't guarantee it.
Who can I write to? Just to,
Well,
because
we captured your attendance,
Yes.
so, you know.
It's just with ProLearner, there are certain restrictions. You have to register for the event to get credit for the event, but you were enrolled for a different one. We will try our best to make it work within the system. ProLearner is a very new system for us as well. We'll try our best, like we said before, but in the morning, we want to make sure you attend the correct system.